Hello all and welcome, and I am the MGTOW philosopher. And in today's video, I would like to discuss how men and women are in no way equal. Now, of course, you hear the opposite sentiment all the time from egalitarians, meaning feminists. Men and women are equal, but different. Now, what they're saying there is contradictory. For one thing, their first statement is a blanket one. When egalitarians, aka feminists, say that men and women are equal, it means the same in every way, except for their sexual organs. Of course, that's the different part that they're talking about. Otherwise, men and women are capable of the same amount of good and evil from an egalitarian's point of view. But are they? Are they really? And do they enact the same amount of benevolence and malevolence in the world? Of course, egalitarians say that men and women are equally capable of malice. But do they go so far, any of them, as to say that men and women are not equal in these ways? Do they go so far as to tell the truth? That women are superior to us men in one way that can't be denied? Their capacity for evil? Not good, evil. For you see, a woman's nature doesn't lend itself well to being equal to men in regards to acts of kindness and goodness. Their emotional natures and lack of critical thinking and reason, coupled with their rampant narcissism, the me mentality, lends itself more to evil than to goodness, or at the very least, destructive as opposed to constructive endeavors. Part of that could be labeled as unintentional evil, a side effect of simply not thinking through one's actions or being able to accurately predict outcomes with any real skill. Therefore, I suppose some of women's evil acts could simply be boiled down to their natures, and therefore couldn't be labeled evil insofar as intent. However, it really makes no difference, as the outcome is what matters. And it's the outcome that we need to look at, as well as all of the intentional acts of evil that women commit, simply because it's in their own best interest to do so. And once we look, truly look, and see all the evil that women do in the world, both intentionally through their pettiness, bitterness, outright malice, or greed, and unintentionally through their lack of self-reflection, concern for others, we'll see that they far outstrip men in terms of evil committed in this world. Now, firstly, they've destroyed the economies of all Western nations. Why? Why, just to make their lives easier, of course. Men don't push for programs that tax people to death or steal and redistribute their wealth in the form of welfare. Men never did any of these things until women got the vote. And anyone with half a brain knows you don't give to everyone straight from the public coffers until you're bankrupt. But women? Oh no, not women. They don't know any of this stuff, or they just don't care. They're totally self-serving and about making their lives easier. They're all about their feelings. They're not about logic or reason. Nope. Sure, they want to help people, but their help does far more harm than good. And that's evil. Doing harm is evil. And I don't care about their intentions either. If you run me over, am I really going to care why? And that's an accident, by the way. The consequences of unbridled altruism are well known and totally foreseeable. But not to women. You know, the road to hell was paved with good intentions. Yes, your intentions might have been benevolent, but you still ended up in hell all the same. And by the way, you have to do evil to get there, regardless of your intent. And we know that feminism is evil. It says one thing and then says another in the next breath that totally contradicts the prior statement given. Men and women are equal. Let's create affirmative action to give women an advantage. Well, wait a second. There's nothing equal about that. Men and women are equal, but men are worse. They're horrible. They're evil. Kill them all. Wouldn't that mean that women are equally horrible? And by the way, how do you go from the same to different? And that's every aspect of feminism, by the way. Contrary messages, because feminism can only work with contrary messages. Because it isn't about equality at all. It's about superiority and women becoming superior and totalitarian over men. It's about ruling men and grinding men under their boot heels. That's evil. An evil that couldn't be accomplished without those contrary messages. Next, fraud. Women, by and large, commit more fraud than men. Far more. Because they get married. I mean, hell, how many gigolos are running around out there defrauding old grandmas out of their life savings? How many men are marrying women under false pretenses just so they can get a hold of their money sock? Some, but not many, as most men couldn't bring themselves to bang an old granny on a regular basis just for a paycheck. Not so for women. If there's money involved, they can make themselves do almost anything, including banging fat old grandpas. Yes, there are both male and female fraudsters out there running scams on people, but only women get to do it legally. And something being legal doesn't make it right or not evil. Many a horrible thing has been done that was and is legal. Just ask the Jews of former Nazi Germany who are still alive. It was made legal to harass, beat, and drive them out of their homes. Legal doesn't mean right or just. It just means legal. Yes, women have carte blanche when it comes to being able to commit fraud. They'll get engaged to numerous men and then find some way to get the man to call it off, just so they can keep the engagement ring. Or they'll marry men just for their money and legally steal it from them via divorce, because women care more about money than anything else. Does that sound good or noble to you? It sounds evil to me, or at the very least, base and animalistic. Sure, men care about sex, but what we care about won't ruin someone else's life. Getting married because we want a sexual companion doesn't entail taking all of the other person's resources and leaving them penniless, after which they want to, and often do, kill themselves, as the suicide stats prove, with 87% of suicides being men. And that brings us to the major cause of men killing themselves: women. You don't see women killing themselves in overwhelming numbers, do you? Oh no, because women don't lose all their resources, generally speaking, when a marriage ends. Nor do women suffer, by and large, from things like homelessness or lack of aid if they lose their job or get sick. Women have far more help available to them than men do. Healthcare, welfare, domestic abuse shelters, rape shelters. Do you know more than 90% of the homeless are men? Of course, because women have their magic vaginas to buy them a place to sleep if they need it. And if all else fails, there's the state to take care of them. And yet, with all these privileges available to women and not to men, it's men who are painted as the oppressors, who are painted as the evil, privileged beings who get all the goodies. Yet, men have no resources available to them from the state, and everything is geared towards women's comfort and helping women when they are in need. How are men privileged? And where's the so-called patriarchy that's supposed to be looking after our best interests? I thought being privileged meant you had all those things available to you, not the opposite. And that's also evil, by the way. To deny men help when they're in need, just so that women will have more help available than they could ever avail themselves of. Just so as to ensure that women never go without, but at the expense of men. Then, to add insult to injury, they paint men as evil, heartless oppressors when that's what they actually are. Now that's evil, but that's what leftists do. They blame the other side for what they're guilty of, which in turn makes you, their adversary, become defensive, and this changes the focus of the narrative from them to you, their foe. It's a very old Marxist trick. And how about murder, huh? Do women kill as often as men do? An interesting question. And when we look at the numbers, we see something very interesting in who is and is not a victim of murder. That's for sure. For example, 77.8% of victims in America are men, while only 22.2% of murder victims are women. So immediately we see something very interesting here. A very large disparity. Men are murdered at a rate of 3.5 times more than women. Interesting. So men are the victims of homicide far more than women, 3.5 times more. And yet, women are the bigger victims in society. And by the way, do women really want equality? Well, clearly they don't. Otherwise, they'd be dying as much as we men do. And are we men really the privileged ones? With these stats, I don't see how. I also don't see how women are greater victims than men when you see these stats. I guess women's suffering is worth many times that of men. Anyhow, back to who's more evil. Now, at first glance, the number of male murderers almost exactly matches the number of male victims. 73% of those arrested are men. So 27% of murderers in the USA are women. A large disparity. So men are more evil, right? Wrong. You see, first, we must look deeper than the numbers because A, murder is not the only yardstick for measuring evil, and B, there are also other factors to consider, such as the fact that these numbers only cover those who are caught, not those murderers who go undetected. Nor do these numbers speak to being morally, though not legally, responsible. So, let's look at the fact that many a murder does indeed go undetected. That's right, undetected. Which murders am I talking about? Why, those done with poison, of course. And who uses poison to kill? Why, mostly women, of course, because women lack the physical strength to murder with their hands. Though sure, they can use knives or guns in the heat of the moment, they're far more likely to kill using poison. And most such deaths, well, they go, you guessed it, undetected. How many? We don't know. They are, after all, undetected. What we do know is that poison is overwhelmingly a woman's weapon. And when talking about a country like America, a country with 350 million people, the number of deaths by poison that go undetected could easily be in the thousands every year. That's a conservative estimate. So ratchet up the kill count for the ladies. And let's not forget about suicides that are faked. Many suppose suicide is likely at the hands of a woman who is trying to make it look like a man killed himself. How many? Impossible to know, but there must be some that are setups considering how many men as opposed to women kill themselves every year. And what about real suicides? Yes, men are pulling the trigger, jumping off bridges or tying the nooses themselves, but why? Because of women, of course. Women who have voted themselves so much power and privilege that men are left with nothing. If a man gets divorced, he'll lose his kids, his house, his money, and even his business if he has one. He'll lose his family. He'll have no help or support of any kind. Nowhere to go in most cases. Talk about disenfranchisement. He'll go from being a father and provider to a possible deadbeat dad living in a shoebox who gets to see his kids once or twice a month if he's lucky. He'll go from having the love of his kids to eating antidepressants for lunch. Meanwhile, women have all sorts of free help offered to them if they have a hard time after getting divorced. There's even more help and privileges available to them if they declare the horrible man as an abuser. Then she's sure to get the kids and that guaranteed monthly check that in most cases will leave him destitute. For you see, women initiate the majority of divorces. Yet instead of suffering any consequences for this action, they are instead rewarded. And the rewards get bigger the more she has to say of a negative nature about him. And if the woman can brand him as a wife beater and a child abuser, boom, she just hit the jackpot, baby. That he'll suffer the stigma of being labeled an abuser, well, that's of no consequence to her. Only she matters. No one else. Not even the kids, who in most cases are nothing more than pawns to be used by her to get what she wants. Now that's evil, folks. Oh, but cry me a river when anyone brings up the male suicide rate. Yeah, right. Cry me a river indeed. That statement alone epitomizes the evil of women. Anyhow, all this taken into account, you could make the argument that women are responsible for these men killing themselves. After all, if you take away everything a man has and leave him with nothing, no hope, no kids, a ruined life, what other options has he got? Being a man, not many. In fact, none really. And is this not foreseeable? Especially considering that the male suicide rate is known to be a major issue? Don't women know that men are very likely to kill themselves if you divorce them and take their kids and all their stuff? Well, sure they do, but men are the real objects in this world, so what happens to them doesn't really matter. Men were created to be disposable, you see. Yes, that's right. To women, we are nothing more than disposable plow horses to be put down once we've served our purpose or gone lame, or they just want to get a new plow horse that's a bit better at pulling that plow. And then there's other ways that women kill men. As we've seen from the media, which does its best to hide women's criminal superiority, women are more likely to hire a man to kill another man for them. And what about men who kill for women? Kill over women, start wars for women, start wars on women's behalf. The West has been run by women for the past 100 years, and in that time period, we've had more war and more deaths in this past 100 years than in all of recorded history prior to this period. And what about all the deaths caused by ideologies that are championed mainly by women? Socialism, for example, which has killed more people than the populations of most Western countries, save the USA. 200 million in a century. Good Lord! And in truth, this is a movement that had its birth in the French Revolution. It was a movement started by women, championed by women, and sadly taken up by men to serve, you guessed it, the wants and desires of women. Women who more than anything else were and are feminists, which is really just cultural Marxism, i.e. socialism. If not for them, one could argue that socialism may never have even existed to kill all those people in the first place. And how do you judge who kills, who commits a murder? Do you judge it going by the hand that directly carries it out, or do you judge it by the hand that's responsible for it being carried out? Well, both, because both are murder. And when you take that into account, you will see that women have killed more and done more harm in this world than any man. Any. Talk about evil. And let's not forget about sexual assault, something that women commit far more than men do. Why do you think the left, meaning feminists, push the narrative of men being sexual predators? Why do you think they push that so hard? Why do you think they try to paint men as natural deviants? Because the truth is the stats prove that they are the real deviants. They are the ones who are committing these type of sexual assaults far more than men, and they don't want you to know it. It's that old Marxist trick again of accusing your enemy of being what you actually are. If you want to identify the truth of a leftist's words, simply flip the script of anything they're saying and apply it to women instead of men. If you do that, then you'll come to the truth. But don't ever believe anything a feminist says. They're the world's biggest liars, and they are master manipulators. This is exactly what I talked about in my video about women raping men more. They prey on the weak, and they're master manipulators. While men forcibly rape more, which is, by the way, a ham-handed and tactically speaking foolish way to go about it, women use their minds to do the one thing they're better at than us. Manipulating others. A far more effective method, using the nature of young boys against them, as well as their shame, so as to keep them quiet. Yeah, preying on helpless boys. Evil indeed. As for crimes that are more straightforward, well, women are more or less on par with men, at least at first glance. And the crimes I talk about are things like fraud and embezzlement. Something that women are committing at numbers which are almost equal to those of men, even though women have tons of legal ways to defraud men and get away with it. And by the way, taking that into account, the few percentile points difference between men and women in this regard is actually quite shocking. At least when you consider all the legal yet immoral ways that women can defraud and steal from men. I mean, really, they have so many legally acceptable options available to them which allow them to steal from us, yet they still resort to illegal ones about as much as men do. This says a lot about women, that they defraud others far more than men do, be it legal or illegal. After all, fraud is fraud. So, are women equal to men? Oh no, not even close. They're weaker, less intelligent, and less capable in almost every way. But they do surpass us in their greed and self-entitlement. In these things, they are superior. Oh yes, by far. So, yes, women are more evil than men. They are more capable of evil due to their lack of empathy. They are more capable of evil due to their emotional natures that control them instead of vice versa. They are more capable of evil simply because they seemingly have no morals. If they can get away with something, they do it. If it's legal and they can benefit, sure, do it. Doesn't matter who else might be harmed. Same goes for it being illegal. If they can get away with it, by and large, they will do it. Now, yes, men in the form of white knights, simps, cucks, and manginas allow women to legally act out their evil desires. But they don't make women do any of the things that women do. Oh no, those decisions lie solely in the hands of women. And clearly, going by the data, they don't often hesitate to act out on their desires if they feel they either won't get caught, won't suffer any consequences, or that they will actually benefit in some way. And it doesn't hurt that the media and all the useful idiots of the world aid and abet women by trying to minimize the appearance of harm that's inflicted by their actions, as well as minimize their culpability for said actions. Not to mention that most of the harm they are allowed to do is perfectly legal. Of course, it's not their fault. Oh no, the patriarchy made them do all of it, don't you know? And yet, year by year, the amount of crimes men commit has been dropping, while at the same time, the amount of crimes women commit has been on the rise. Why is that? Is the world somehow more patriarchal than it was 50 or 60 years ago? Because that's what women blame all their bad behavior on, the patriarchy. Well, isn't that to blame? The answer is no, of course not. The Western world has never been less patriarchal than it is now. So why? Why are women committing ever more crimes whilst men are committing ever less? I'll tell you why. Because men are getting married less and less each year and are becoming less and less willing to act on behalf of women. After all, most crimes committed by a man are on behalf of a woman, out of love or a desire to provide for her. In fact, if one looks at the advent of feminism, one can see that crime has been declining among men ever since third-wave feminism really began to take hold. Declining for men while rising for women. Because men are getting ever more tired of women's crap year by year, and year by year they are deciding to do less and less for women. Hence, year by year, women are having to do more and more of their own dirty work. That's why. It looks like women beat men in every way. Their actions, be them advertent or inadvertent, have killed more people in the past century than can be easily imagined. And let's not forget about the many women of the past who've caused so much damage. Figures like Helen of Troy, for example. Boy, oh, did she do a lot of harm if one's to believe the stories. One need only look at the history of the world to see how many deaths women have caused, either advertently or inadvertently due to their lack of foresight and poor judgment. However, one need not look back to see women's evil. You only need to look at the world around you and see it for yourself. They hog all the resources society has to provide, leaving men with no help when they need it. They drive men to kill themselves by stealing everything men have, including their children, and all for love of money. And it's all legal, by the way. Meanwhile, he's left penniless, until he dies by his own hand, of course. And something you may or may not know is that 2/3 of all gun deaths in the USA are suicides, and 87% of those are men killing themselves, in most cases because of women. Women kill silently, stealthily, through poison and subterfuge. We don't know how many, but we know it can't be just a few in a country with 350 million people, in a world with 7.5 billion people. Women are more violent than men, as my video on the subject has pointed out. You can find it in my video library. They are more likely to initiate violence, and they overwhelmingly get off scot-free because of the always believe her narrative and things like the Duluth model. Women cry rape when they're jilted by a man. As many as 25% or more of all rapes reported by women are false. In some areas in America, more than 40% of rape accusations have been proven false. This ruins men's lives. But women don't care. Men aren't allowed to reject women. How dare a man do such a thing? After all, men and the world at large is there to serve a woman's needs. You can't reject a woman. If you do, she'll rightly make that man who rejected her pay. It's easy enough to do when cops always believe women. Ah, sweet revenge. They lie, cheat, and steal at near parity with men. And if one throws in the fraud they commit with marriage and the subsequent divorce where they steal all a man has, well, they win in these areas as well. They brand masculinity as toxic. They put men in jail for crimes they didn't commit. They fail to educate our sons and instead turn them into self-hating, half-man, half-woman he-she's who will in most cases never know or understand what it really means to be a man. Men have never done anything so diabolical to women. Not ever. And all for their own self-aggrandizement and enfranchisement. Despicable. And when you look at the history of women, at the carnage they've caused, either through manipulating men, killing them directly, or through their evil ideologies, you begin to see that women beat men in every metric of what could be labeled as evil. That's why they work so hard to convince you men out there that you are the evil ones. They want to keep the spotlight squarely off themselves. So men, stop thinking of yourselves as less pristine, less moral, or that you're more deviant and evil than women. It just ain't so. By every possible metric, they beat us hands down in their ability to destroy nations, destroy other people for their own selfish gains, and in their total lack of morality. Gentlemen, forget any narratives you've heard about women being superior. They are superior in one and one way only, and that is in their ability to do evil in this world or have it done on their behalf. That's all I have to say on this topic. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment in the comment sections to let me know what your thoughts are on this subject. And if you're so inclined, please make a small donation to my Patreon. As little as $1 a month will help me to make more of this original content for you, my listeners. You'll find a link in both the description and the last 20 seconds of this video. I am the MGTOW philosopher, and I wish you a good day. Take care.